does the bell mean?
That's the start of the recording. So after a slight technical glitch, I think we're ready to... This is a recording we're making, hopefully a series of recordings. It's an attempt to make a sort of Sellwood archive that I might publish later. We'll see how it goes. It's the first one. You were going to talk about the what you remember of the tannery when it was working.
Well, I can talk a bit about that. Yeah.
What do you remember?
Oh, funny.
You used to crawl about in it, did you?
Am I recording?
You are?
Oh, I see. Hello, my name is Robert Binford Sellwood, Robin for short, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our family and the tannery. The tannery was owned in Cullompton by the Sellwood family, and they were quite rich, the Sellwood family. They owned this tannery and a number of farms round about in Cullompton. A lot of our ancestors are buried in Cullompton Cemetery in a vault, and you could go and see them there if you want. The tannery was started, I think, in the middle of the 19th century, and my grandfather came to run it, and he built a house in Cullompton, a very splendid house next to the church there. The family was very religious in a rather austere way, I think. My sister, Anne, can remember going to stay with Aunt Lucy and not being allowed to read anything except the Bible on Sundays and that sort of thing. I can remember going into the tannery.
Can I correct you? It wasn't Aunt Lucy, it was her grandmother.
Sorry, yes, that's right. Then,
Whose grandmother? Anne's grandmother, do you mean?
Lucy was...
Yes, your grandmother as well was called Lucy, wasn't she?
Married Frank. I can remember going into the tannery and later on, and we made the sort of leather that were used for the soles of shoes.
Mm.
And the leather all had to be sorted out into, I think they were called bends. You had to make quite sure that the leather didn't have any blowholes in it because it reduced the value of the hide, of course. What else?
Very smelly, wasn't it?
It was very smelly. That, of course, the people in Cullompton, half of whom was employed by the family, didn't like the smell very much. I thought it was wonderful because where all our money came from.
So, at that time, when you were born, I suppose...
1935 I was born.
Yeah. So your father was working in the tannery, running it?
Yes, he was a doctor actually, but I don't think he practiced much.
Right.
When my grandfather died, somebody had to take care of the tannery, so he did that.
When Frank died, your grandfather?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I think your father, though we don't really know, but I think during the First World War, he was probably working as a doctor with the troops.
Is that right?
Well, I remember somebody saying something about him being affected by gas.
Is that right? Yes, I have a sort of feeling that might be right.
I don't know if Anne knows anything.
Yeah.
We ought to ask Anne.
Yeah.
I think we should run this past Anne and see if she can fill in some more gaps.
Right. Good idea.
So Frank, did he die before your birth then?
Oh yes, I think so. Yeah. George Binford Sellwood, that is. Frank Jr. was his brother.
From the time you remember, Uncle Frank was running the tannery, who was the next
Yes, that's
Frank,
true.
the next generation down.
Yeah. Anyway, the war was declared in 1939. The year before that, in Christmas time in 1938, my father was killed in a car crash, and my mother had tuberculosis, and she was in a sanatorium in Davos in Switzerland.
So remind me how old you were when your father was killed then? You were 4?
4, yeah. Of course, I have no remembrance of my parents, except on one occasion, because my mother had tuberculosis.
Yeah.
My parents built a house called Milkmore in Cullompton
Yeah.
with a sort of veranda,
Uh-huh.
so that it was thought that if you were in the open air, it killed the bacteria, as indeed it does actually. The sunlight kills the bacteria. I can't remember where I got to now.
Well, I was asking if you remembered your parents, but since you were 4, you don't really.
No, Anne, of course, does. So Anne was 3 years older than me.
And Jean, your mother's name was Jean,
She had called Jean, yes.
and she flew back after the accident.
Yes, I'll come to that in a minute. My parents had this house, a big brick house next to the church in Willand, and adjacent to that was the vicar of Willand, who was Charles Harris, and he was the vicar at the same time that Frank was running the tannery, and Lucy, my grandmother, hatched out a plan for for the marriage of my mother,
Who was the vicar's daughter?
who was the vicar's daughter then, and and that she, the vicar's daughter, and my father, Binford, went, and which indeed they did, and all sort of hatched out by the previous generation.
An arranged marriage.
What?
Would you call it an arranged
An
marriage?
arranged marriage, yes, of course. Anyway, where did I got to? My father was living in Cullompton with my mother at this sanatorium in Switzerland. And my father wrote her a letter every week, and I've still got these letters, or somebody's got them, I don't know. And they're very interesting letters. Among other things, my father, when Neville Chamberlain came back with his little bit of paper from visiting Hitler, the adjacent parish called Willand, in the church there, had a service of thanksgiving that war had been averted. And but my father, on going back, said, "War will not be averted.
Yeah.
It will ruin a generation. We should win it, but it'll ruin a generation," which I guess was correct. He wrote these letters. Well, one of the things was that we had this tannery which sold leather, and the tannery wasn't actually doing terribly well.
Right.
And my father didn't know. He writes in his letters to my mother that he didn't know how much to charge for the leather.
Yeah.
Because people weren't walking on leather so much. And, but then at the outbreak of war, of course, war involves soldiers, and soldiers do marching. And so my father could have charged a lot at that point for his leather. But of course, I mean, among other things, he had to employ all these people in Cullompton. But
So when Jean came back to Milkmore,
Milkmore, yes.
she was living there a while. We were able to be with her at that time because it was infectious, wasn't it?
Oh, very much so, yes.
And she wasn't at Milkmore at that time. She came back and went up to her parents' house in
yes, after in the middle of the war,
Cranworth.
When the war broke out, of course, she had to come back from
Switzerland.
From Switzerland.
From Davos, you
Yeah,
said.
and she went to live at my grandfather, Charles Harris's house. He was by then vicar of a place called Cranworth.
Right.
Great big house with dozens of children milling about.
But you couldn't be close to her because she was unwell.
Well, she wasn't allowed any contact with me in case it should affect the children. And I discovered later on that actually Anne was infected. It's described how when the doctor came, he listened with his stethoscope to the top of the chest, which is where tuberculosis used to settle. Anyway, she survived that. And she died of tuberculosis probably in about the middle of the war, maybe 1943 or something like that.
Oh, so
I think it would be relevant, Robin, to describe why you didn't go and live with you lived with your father when he was alive, and there was a good deal of discussion in the letters about employing nannies and things like that.
Oh yes, various.
But Anne was not there. She was being, she was with Pooh.
Yeah.
Pooh was her godmother, and that's how Anne came to be looked after by Pooh.
Yeah.
Who was a single person and
Yeah.
was very keen to have a child, I think.
Yeah. So your dad was working, and Anne was with Pooh,
Yes.
and you had childminders, nannies.
Yes,
The
there
German
were
nanny to
various
begin with.
German ladies came. My
Oh,
mother had-
Germans.
Yes, they were. I can't remember what they were called.
So,
You can read all about them
So
in the letters.
the next thing, when my father,
but I'm trying to work out what you when you start remembering things. How old are children when they start remembering things? 5,
very variable.
6, or something?
I remember quite a lot, and of the things because we moved house when I was 5, and that's when Andy was born, and we lived in a different house until
Yeah.
I was 5, and I remember it very well. Teen, who is 15 months younger than me, doesn't remember it at all. It's very
Yeah.
strange,
Yeah.
but I remember it.
So around 5 or something.
Yes, or 4, I think.
But after the accident, you went to live with Daniel, and
Yes, but
who was Daniel's father called?
Uncle Frank.
Frank.
Uncle Frank.
So you lived with Uncle Frank, and you must have
Yes,
remembered that house.
Funnily enough, I can't, because Frank was a teacher in Kenya, a
Yeah.
place called Kikuyu, and I went to live with them for about a year, and while there, Lucy, the grandmother, died there, and I think I had malaria actually there. But of course, when the war became obvious, we had to leave there, and
So the time that you lived with Uncle Frank, that you lived in Kenya. In
Yes,
Kenya.
during the war, you see, both Al and I were living with Pooh, Kathleen Andrews, as she was then.
But you must have gone to Kenya before the war began with Uncle Frank.
I can remember going out, one of the earlier memories I do have actually was going out to Kenya on a flying boat.
Mm.
And you had a table in the flying boat with proper dinner on it. And I can remember something to do. I wanted to put lots of pepper on my meal for some reason. And then we went down, and the flying boat touched down in Alexandria. And I can remember getting out of the flying boat onto a sort of ferry thing.
Would that flying boat have come that wouldn't have come all the way from the UK though?
Well, I can't remember where it touched down before. It presumably run out of fuel, wasn't it?
A big journey to go from the UK.
Yes, quite.
So you lived there, and Daniel, your cousin Daniel, was 9 years older than you, I think?
Yes, he's 9 years older than me, yes. Daniel went to a leather college in London.
So,
Actually, is that enough now at the moment?
just one more thing though, but do you remember living in Kenya?
A little bit. I do remember, actually. I remember a sort of bungalow where we lived, and Auntie Marjorie, Frank's wife, she had been Marjorie Barrett, who owned a shoe shop in London. Probably still there. I remember that I was fascinated by an African man who could walk on his hands.
He could walk on
with his legs.
Okay.
And I remember Auntie Marjorie, when I got up one morning, Auntie Marjorie went on to the balcony of our little place, and she said, "Do you see that?" So that was a paw mark. She said it was a lion's paw. And I was very impressed with this. I went to school in Nairobi. I think it was called the Prince of Wales School. I can't remember now.
And that must have been when you were about 4 or 5, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
So that's things you remember very clearly.
Well, I can remember it's funny how you remember odd, rather stupid things, that kind of little bits of memories. I don't know.
So, Mummy, would you be happy to talk about, if I stopped the video and then started another one, would you be happy to talk about the first thing you remember?
Okay.
All right, I'm going to stop.
I just want to see what the time is, because I have to remember. It's now 2 o'clock nearly. I'm serving in Cathedral at 5:30. So